price of games. Rise up, stand the price, the loss of legs. My occupation, in essence, not complacent. Block the banquet, stop the computation. I'ma make the coda, fools just wanna make the quota. They can't rock around here, they need baking soda. This a hydra, no way they taking over. Lay them below the basement with snakes and cobras.
This is Shawn Crystal. Catch the Inkpulp podcast on PharcydeTV Wednesdays at noon Pacific time, 3 o'clock Eastern time. Come hang. Peace. This is the Inkpulp podcast. This is the Inkpulp podcast. Comics, hip-hop, life. Welcome to the Inkpulp podcast. Your host, Shawn Crystal, part 4 of the Sean Murphy interview. If it seems a little choppy, I'm really hoping it doesn't. This is me and Alan trying to figure out this new format for the interview episodes we'll be doing. So if it's a little choppy or you're a little confused or maybe you're a little lost, maybe you didn't listen to the previous episodes, go do that because it is kind of like, it was one conversation that we're chopping up. This will also inform us how to do better as we move forward. But yeah, let's get into part 4. Shawn has another question for me. He has so many questions. And mind you, let me tell you, this was his idea. Alright, we were shooting Inkpulp Instruction. I had in my mind, like, maybe we'll get to some podcast stuff. But it was kind of like, we're doing a lot. I don't want to ask too much of Shawn. But Shawn wanted to do this. So I'm glad he did because now we have a kind of like the first lap, the first run of the new interview episodes of the Inkpulp podcast. Enjoy. Peace.
I think we're just in the phase of burning the fat off at this point because there's a lot of people. When the rounds of layoffs happened at DC, I called people I knew and I was like, I'm so sorry. And they go, well, they're getting rid of a lot of people that don't really do much around the office. I was like, okay, that's interesting. But then now they're just a skeletal crew trying to get by.
They also got rid of some pretty important, like 100%. Art directors, for example, getting rid of.
Yeah. I
mean, Chiarello was something this industry really needs.
Yeah. When Mark Doyle got laid off,
Mark
he's personally responsible for bringing in Scott Snyder and me and I thought that he was untouchable. I imagine he made a high salary because he deserves it, but it sucks that when you get well paid for doing a good job, it puts you in the crosshairs of capitalism. Right. Well, that's the time we're living in. Yeah.
All right, so we resolved that.
Okay.
I'm asking.
I think we did. I think your nature, this is why I love you, you're always going to fight the fight for the artist, for the creative type, for the underdog. I'm slightly more wired for capitalism, and I love to come crashing down on people that suck at planning ahead or bad at business.
Right.
Like I'm gonna come off like a
bad at for a long time.
And I'm gonna come across like a Republican, even though I'm not. I can't help because I was raised that way, and it's easy. Like I enjoy being harsh on artists because I know they're not pulling their weight and doing everything they can to defend themselves. They're a bunch of
that's true.
passive motherfuckers who are really easy to steamroll.
And that is happening. Yeah,
like I want them to want more for themselves, but I can't help people that aren't looking out for their own interests.
You're right.
That's why it's easy for writers to say, well, these are my artists. Yeah. And writers will trade artists as if you own these artists.
Right.
And like that to me is extremely offensive. And I know you agree. Yeah. But I understand why that happens because these artists aren't pushing back.
Yeah. That's true. And I mean, I played that game too. Where I was like, I need to hitch myself to a writer to be worth anything for my career. And while that may have been true, if I had hitched myself to a good writer and got a project that launched my career up higher, that probably would have helped me. And I resented that I had to do that.
Yeah.
That I believe, and maybe I didn't have to do that. I believed that was the best thing to do. But yeah, that I didn't like that either. And then so, you work with a writer on a nice project, and then, you know, they have an interview and they don't mention you, it's like like nothing seems to make any sense.
That is offensive, and that's not good. And most writers, the good writers, do go out of their way to appreciate the artist in every chance they get.
It seems someone like Scott is always like making sure the artist is pulled in the equation.
He does. I've seen Donny Cates stop reporters and be like, I got to thank the artist, like, to his credit. Like, I think a lot of smart writers do that. Yeah. Because I know if they don't, artists will start to get really angry behind the scenes, and it eventually will lead to a confrontation of some kind.
It should.
Yeah.
All right. So did we answer it? Is there something else you wanted to say?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so, yeah.
All right.
Oh, well, this is like, we'll have a few more of these throughout our career.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. We always do. We always have.
Right.
All right.
I want to push back for a second on something you said, though.
All right, hold on. Let me get some more whiskey.
All right, so let me just set up. Alan has a question for Shawn. He wants to push back on something. So, Alan, go ahead. Okay, so Alan's question to Shawn is, people come to his table and could communicate what they liked about the story and the writing, but can't communicate what they liked about the art.
But when I was a kid, in the very early 80s, all we ever talked about was the art. We never talked about the writing.
All right. I'm going to, because that was on my tongue, but I answered, but Shawn had said, we are artists, we look at it differently.
Yeah, but I wasn't an artist when I was a kid.
Oh, okay,
so
that's fair.
Alan is saying when he was a kid, they talked about the art, not about the writing.
Right.
So my response would be, you went to art school.
I went to art school when I was 35.
You went to art school.
Yeah, Alan
you were
had come
trained in art, though. I've seen your pages.
Alan had come to art school not having drawn much.
Right. No, I wish everyone who bought comics was into art and story equally, but I think you're a minority. I think we're a minority because
I mean, I agree with that because I'm an artist, so I can't, like, I'm thinking about, like, who I would talk to about comic book art, and it was artists generally. Yeah.
Like, if I'm a big fan of, give me a band, Led Zeppelin. If I go up to Led Zeppelin, I'm gonna be like, I love the way your music makes me feel. I love that part in the song where you did that. I love the drums, like, fuck yeah. And they're gonna say, are you a musician? I'm gonna say no. I put it on the radio when I'm driving to work and back, and I'm like, I'm 99% of your fan base, honestly. Right. If I was a musician, I'd be saying different things like, oh man, the time signature changing in the song is amazing. Like that.
Okay, so Led Zeppelin is a great example. Are you able to articulate that you like how big John Bonham's drums sound?
I could say I like the drums a lot.
Right. Okay. So that's where I was going to go. So maybe people can't come up and articulate like, oh man, your compositions are incredible. Your page design is mind blowing. But they can say that shit looks great and it makes me feel awesome. Right. So on a visceral level, they can connect to the art.
Yes, and they do, but they're able to describe connections with character in finer detail more than they can describe why they like the art. Right. They can say very
fair. I think
at a surface level, I like the art, it's scratchy, it's this, it's that. But then they can go into deep connections. Like, I love Harley, I have a daughter, I like that Harley is getting over some trauma, I've had trauma. Like, they go real deep with writing real fast. That's true. And people aren't equipped to go deep with art because they're not trained, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. And comics is a very intimate, one-on-one thing. Yeah, all right, fair.
Like if I have a line of 100 people, I can tell who the artists are because they're far and few between, but I can tell, like, they all appreciate art because they're buying comics, period. Like, most buyers of comics are somewhat trained in art because they're here at all. But their knowledge is limited, and that's okay. But their knowledge of, like, man, I really connect with Bruce Wayne and parents, and I lost my parents, like, that's 3 levels deeper than they understand art. And that's okay. Like, I never get annoyed, like, really, you like the way I wrote the Joker, but you don't appreciate the way I rendered his nose? Fuck you. No comics for you.
That's fair.
I feel like I'm expecting too much out of people if I really want them to really understand the art. Because if they understood art the way I'd like them to, they would all be artists, and they're not.
Right. Yeah, and that's why, you have what's known as the artist.
Yeah.
Someone who, maybe isn't like the most popular, but every artist will drop everything to look at what they're doing.
I think so, for sure.
And music's the same way. I mean, the stuff Alan listens to, I would never even stop listening to. But
Right.
musically they're going to blow away anything I listen to.
You don't like the Dixie Chicks?
No, what's the? I mean,
probably one of my favorite bands is Food. Do you know these guys?
I've heard of them. I don't know their music.
They're out of England, and they.
So Alan's talking about a band called Food from England. Go ahead.
They are super amazing improvisationalists, but they don't plan anything that they record, so it's all free improv. And the idea that they can do that free improv is.
So he's advocate of free jazz and improv music, and this is a hard disagree for me.
See, but that's my point.
Tune your instruments before you show up.
But my point is,
bunch of passive beta
knows
males.
music. Like, he's a trained musician and sound engineer.
But that kind of music is for people that like music too much.
All right, but that's what I'm saying. There's artists that we appreciate that others won't like.
Who's an artist for people who like art too much? Like an artist
Kevin
who goes
Nolan.
too far. Okay, but he has some mainstream appeal.
I don't know if he does or he doesn't, but I think to someone who's not an artist, Kevin Nolan looks like another comic book artist.
Right. So my answer would be, I love Mazzucchelli.
Yeah.
But the book he did,
Mysterious Polyp?
yeah, that is a book for artists who like art too much. And it's so specific and it's so off the beaten path. And I'm glad that we live in a world where that exists.
Yeah,
But like, if I was a producer, I would never put a book like that out.
Right,
'cause it's
but
who's going to read this, man?
if we look at it from a non-business perspective, we look at it from the sacred temple of the religion of comic book art.
Which is where you fucking live.
Right. So from that temple, that's a great thing to have in existence because it is using the medium in some of the most amazing ways I've ever seen the medium used before.
But at some point, so I have a friend who's really good at punk rock and metal, and he's got a great band called Covered in Bees, a local Portland band. And he is trained like he perfect pitch. He understands why Bach is brilliant and Mozart and all that stuff. And he went through the right college courses, and he finally hit a point where he goes, I'm studying things that are so specific in music that only people who like music too much can even tell at this point.
Right.
Like it's so far beyond the pale of what most people can consume. It's almost worthless. His words, not mine.
Okay, so if
he wanted to do punk rock, I wanted to do good music, solid, and the everyman can get into.
Helmet. They're trained jazz musicians. They went to, I don't remember which school, but a very prestigious
music school. As long as they're not free jazz, because fuck those assholes.
No, Helmet's...
Right, Alan?
Helmet's a metal band, but they're trained jazz... Anyways.
Right.
I guess so okay, I was hoping you did. You've got, pure pop sales style artists here. Pure artist to the extreme here.
Right.
The goal is all of us are looking to fall on the spectrum somewhere. I don't think we're saying you and I ever want to be that artist there.
Right.
But we want to lean that way with whatever we do.
Lean towards being mainstream or being
No. We
artistic?
want to have an audience, but we also want to lean with that audience into like a little bit of artsy stuff too.
Yeah. I agree.
I think that's what makes you and me and a lot of the artists we know and hang out with and respect the same.
Right.
Because we're not just trying to sell bubblegum comics.
Right. We want to elevate our form in small ways, but I think we understand that this is commercial art.
Absolutely.
It's like most comics you see out there look like a Michael Bay comic. And I think that's cool, and I got no problem with Michael Bay. But I'm looking for something more Sam Mendes every now and then, or Fincher.
Right.
And I sort of like that there can be mainstream tentpole stuff, but with enough artistic flair where there's enough caloric, nutritional content to the rather than just fat and salt, like with Michael Bay.
I want some sugar, I want some fat, but I need fiber.
You need fiber, yeah. That's right. Especially as you get older.
For sure.
Before you cut it off, here's my question.
All right, we got another question from the Peanut Gallery. Is this another defense of free jazz?
No. Okay. Although we'll have that conversation.
That's over dinner. I'll watch.
This is the Inkpulp Podcast. This is the Inkpulp Podcast. Comics, hip hop, life,